I never thought the safest place I knew could turn on me in an instant. I live in Dublin, in one of those assisted living complexes with secure gates, daytime reception staff, and security guards patrolling at night. For the most part, I felt genuinely happy and safe here. I'm blind, so independence matters a lot to me, and this place has given me a real sense of freedom. In the summer, I even sleep with my window cracked open if it gets too warm. Once those gates lock at night, I've always believed nothing bad could reach me. Until last Friday, that belief shattered. I've always loved live music. Since I can't see the stage, the view doesn't matter. I buy the cheapest tickets and go to as many concerts and shows around Dublin as I can. Last Friday, the 4th of July, I was coming home from one, a little after 10 p.m. The taxi dropped me at the main gate, which was already locked. I buzzed the intercom twice for the security guard, but there was no answer. He must have been out on one of his hourly patrols. The taxi driver kindly offered to open the stiff side gate for me, let me through, relock it, and pass the key back. I accepted. Halfway across the courtyard, the guard finally appeared, apologizing for missing my bus. He had indeed been patrolling. He helped guide me through the rest of the courtyard, steering me around the parked cars, and then walked me into the building, through reception, and right up to the double doors that lead to my corridor. Normally, he opens those doors for me and lets me continue on my own. It's a straight, clear walk to my apartment door with no obstacles, and I'm behind locked gates with cameras everywhere. I've always felt completely safe making that final stretch alone. That night, I found my door, opened it, stepped inside, and turned to close and lock it behind me like I always do. But the door felt strangely stiff and resistant. My first thought was practical. I need to put in a maintenance request tomorrow. Something was clearly jamming. I pushed harder. The door pushed back. In that split second, horror flooded through me. There was someone on the other side, actively trying to stop me from closing and locking my door. My heart slammed against my ribs. I threw my whole body against it, pushing with every bit of strength I had. Whoever it was pushed right back, matching me. Panic took over completely. I shouted at the top of my voice, "What is it?" The moment I yelled, the pressure vanished. The door slammed shut. I twisted the lock immediately, my hands shaking. I stood there leaning against the wall, breathing hard, trying to process what had just happened. Had someone really tried to force their way into my apartment? How had they followed me so silently through the corridor? Should I call security right now? But what if it was the security guard? What if he could tamper with the cameras? Were there even cameras in my corridor? Would anyone believe me? I went to bed without reporting it, but the fear only grew stronger on Saturday. By the afternoon, I recorded a long voice message on WhatsApp for my key worker, describing everything in detail. I knew she wouldn't see it until Monday, but at least it was documented. On Sunday, I went to another concert. Thankfully, nothing unusual happened, and my door opened and closed normally. On Monday, my key worker finally got the message. She said she'd speak to the building manager and get back to me. A short while later, she arranged a meeting with the three of us. What the manager told me made my blood run cold. The camera footage confirmed it. While the security guard had continued his patrol in the opposite direction, someone else had followed me down my corridor. You couldn't clearly see the struggle at my door on the video, but you could see the person running away afterwards. Because of GDPR, they couldn't immediately tell me who it was, but they had already contacted the police. An officer would come to take my statement. The manager also reassured me that the intruder appeared to be looking for money or valuables. There was no indication of anything sexual. Still, I told them I wanted to press charges. I didn't want this happening to me again or to any of the other residents. They also offered to have a security guard escort me right to my door and wait until I locked it every time I came back from a concert. I accepted without hesitation. To the person who tried forcing their way into my apartment that night, we'll probably meet again, but I hope the next time it's with you in handcuffs. Update. The police came. They were understanding and professional. They interviewed me and reviewed the footage. It turns out my would-be intruder is a minor. I was told I could still press charges, but the youth wouldn't face prosecution, just a stern warning. I decided against it. There was no real punishment coming, and I didn't know what his family situation was like. I didn't want any risk of intimidation later. I only hope the police put enough fear into him that he thinks twice before ever trying something like this again. I never thought a simple trip to the mall could turn into one of the most unsettling days of my life. It was a regular weekend afternoon in one of the larger malls in Georgia. I was 19 at the time, but like my 12-year-old sister and 16-year-old cousin, I've always looked much younger than my actual age. To anyone walking past, the three of us probably looked like a group of teenage girls out shopping together, none of us appearing older than 17 or 18. That detail would matter far more than I realized. We were wandering through the wide, brightly lit corridors, window shopping, grabbing snacks, and enjoying a carefree day as family. The mall had the usual weekend crowd, but it wasn't packed. We were strolling down one of the main hallways when a woman suddenly stepped toward us. She looked rough, messy, unwashed hair, clothes that had clearly been worn for days, and an anxious, almost frantic energy radiating from her. She appeared to be in her late 40s or early 50s. She locked eyes on me immediately. "Can I please borrow your phone?" she asked, her voice urgent. She said she'd been stuck at the mall for 2 full days, shopping, and her ride refused to come pick her up. She claimed she'd been calling them over and over with no answer. Something about the situation felt wrong right away. The way her eyes darted around, the intensity in her stare, but she seemed genuinely desperate, and I didn't want to be the kind of person who ignored someone who might actually need help. Against my better judgment, I handed her my phone. She immediately put the call on speaker. The first number she dialed went straight to a robotic message. "This number has been disconnected or is no longer in service." She barely reacted, muttering something under her breath before quickly dialing another number. This one rang through to voicemail. What happened next made my stomach drop. She started speaking into the phone, her voice growing louder and more frantic. She rambled about how she'd been calling for days, how they knew she was at the mall, and how she couldn't understand why no one would answer or come get her. Then, without warning, she began describing us in detail. She told the voicemail about these 3 nice young girls who had kindly let her use their phone. She described our appearances, guessed our ages, all younger than we actually were, what we were wearing, and how we were staying close together. Hearing a complete stranger narrate every detail about me, my little sister, and my cousin to some unknown person on a voicemail sent chills down my spine. It felt like she was reporting us, marking us. The second she handed the phone back, I grabbed it, turned to my sister and cousin, and said firmly, "We need to go. Right now." I knew exactly where I was heading. A popular alternative clothing store just down the corridor. It was the kind of shop filled with band merch, edgy clothes, posters, and accessories. I'd shopped there before and remembered how friendly and protective the staff were toward younger customers. If anywhere in the mall could give us a safe buffer and people willing to help, it was there. We hurried inside, weaving through the racks of dark hoodies and jewelry displays, trying to act normal while my heart hammered in my chest. We hadn't been in the store more than a few minutes when I spotted her again through the entrance. She walked straight in, eyes scanning every aisle with that same desperate intensity. She began stopping employees and other shoppers, asking if they had seen 3 young girls matching our description. She described us again, our clothes, our ages, how we looked, to anyone who would listen. The store staff immediately picked up that something was wrong. They started positioning themselves closer to us and subtly redirected her questions. I whispered to my sister and cousin to stay hidden behind a large display of hoodies and accessories, keeping low and out of sight. The fact that I had chosen this specific store because I knew the people inside would look out for us probably saved us from a direct confrontation. The situation escalated fast after that. The woman eventually left the store but didn't leave the area. From what we later heard, she latched onto another group of 3 younger-looking females who somewhat resembled us. Her behavior grew increasingly erratic and aggressive until mall security was called. When officers confronted her near the upper level, she tried to throw herself over the railing. Chaos erupted as security had to physically restrain her while panicked shoppers backed away. We stayed hidden in the alternative store until the staff confirmed things had calmed down. They checked on us multiple times, making sure we felt safe. Once the immediate danger passed, we left the mall as quickly as possible, sticking close together and constantly checking over our shoulders. To this day, I still don't know what her real intentions were. The disconnected numbers, the frantic, rambling voicemail where she described us in detail, the way she fixated on us and then moved on to another similar group. It all felt predatory, like she was trying to document us or pull us into something much darker. That day could have ended very differently if I hadn't trusted my instincts and led us straight to the one store where I knew we'd have backup. The moment the plane touched down in Florida, I knew I had just traded one nightmare for another, but by then it was too late to turn back. It was midsummer 2024. I was 22, freshly homeless, and completely exhausted with my life in a small town in Oregon. Back in January that year, my family and I had been evicted from the only house we had. My mom, my 21-year-old sister, and my 2 younger siblings, 15 and 9, had nowhere to go. We couldn't sell the house in time, so we ended up squeezed into a broken-down, unregistered RV. When even that became impossible, we moved into a storage unit with no electricity and no running water. My mother and sister were both deep into fentanyl and other drugs. Their friends were constantly around, mostly older men who gave off creepy, predatory vibes. Mom was in and out of jail for theft, hit and runs, and even worse. That left me, more often than not, as the one responsible for feeding and watching over my little brother and sister. Weeks turned into months of the same cycle: drugs, withdrawals, bail money, screaming matches, and physical abuse. Money for food and water ran out completely. The kids survived on whatever the school gave them. I kept this going by messaging men online and asking for help, then walking to the nearest gas station to buy whatever I could carry. That's how I met her, a 29-year-old woman who started sending me small amounts for food or gas. She was flirtatious from the start, clearly hoping for more. I had just gone through a painful breakup with my girlfriend of 3 years right before we lost the house, so a relationship was the last thing on my mind. We talked for a few weeks. She fell for me hard and eventually told me she was transgender, male to female, no surgeries yet. I'm a lesbian, so I gently explained I wasn't interested romantically. She knew about the chaos at home and, after a while, offered to let me stay with her in Florida. I was hesitant, but I was desperate. As an immigrant from the UK who had been living in the US illegally for 11 years, I couldn't work legally. Getting out of that storage unit felt like my only chance at survival. She bought me a plane ticket for 2 weeks later. I lied to my family and said I was going on a 2-week cruise vacation and would be back soon. My mom would never have let me leave if she knew the truth. The day came. My mom drove me to the airport, crying and begging me not to go. She pleaded in every way possible. I ignored her, heart pounding, and stepped inside. I had never traveled alone before. I was terrified of flying and heights, but desperation pushed me through. The journey was brutal, a short flight, an 8-hour layover, then a long 6-hour flight. They changed my gate at the last minute, and I nearly missed the final plane. I didn't sleep at all, too scared and wired. I landed around 1 p.m. in the thick, humid Florida heat wearing a black hooded onesie that had been perfect for cold Oregon mornings. The contrast was shocking. She was waiting at the terminal entrance. The second she saw me, she picked me up and spun me around like we were a couple, then grabbed my hand and held it all the way to her car. I was already irritated. I didn't want the physical contact, and I was badly nicotine deprived. As soon as we reached the parking area, I pulled my hand away, leaned over the edge, and threw up from motion sickness and jet lag. I lit a cigarette immediately and tried to process everything that had just happened. I hadn't slept in over a day. The 2-hour drive to her place was painfully awkward. She barely spoke. I sat there silently spiraling, still in shock that I had actually left my family behind. When we got to her town, she wanted to stop for food and walk around the ocean pier to show me beautiful Florida. I was starving and beyond exhausted, so I asked if we could just grab something and go home so I could sleep. She kept insisting on the tour. Too drained to argue, I went along with it, walking around in 100-degree heat in my black onesie like a zombie. She started getting annoyed that I was in a mood, even though I had told her multiple times I just needed rest. Back at the house, which was actually a small RV she shared with a male roommate, I asked where I would sleep. She pointed to a single bed that she also used. The bedding had been put away because her cats kept peeing on it. I asked her to set it up, but she made more excuses and suggested another walk around the neighborhood instead. I went. I chain-smoked the whole time. When we returned, she still wouldn't let me sleep. She kept trying to hold my hand and be touchy. Hours passed. Eventually, I broke down crying in front of her. She got annoyed and told me I should just go back home. We took yet another walk at night, now well over 24 hours without sleep. At a little pier, she started kissing me and holding me close. I told her I wasn't comfortable, but she kept pushing. We finally got back around 10 p.m. and she set up the bed. I passed out immediately. The next few days are a blur of random activities around town and decent food. She didn't work. Her roommates supported them both. He worked and played video games while she handled everything else. It was a strange dynamic. About a week in, things turned sour. She started snapping at me over tiny things, getting jealous about people messaging me, and belittling my trauma. She called my family names. They were awful, but it still hurt hearing it from her. When we played games together, her rage at the screen triggered horrible memories of my stepdad's screaming meltdowns. Then she told me she had a son who lived with her family because she couldn't care for him right now. She wanted me to go meet everyone, including the child. I said it wasn't a good idea. I didn't want the boy getting the wrong idea about us, and I desperately needed some alone time after years of constant chaos. She threw a huge fit, but eventually left. Less than 2 hours later, she came back with the whole group, including her son. I was furious but stayed polite for the kids' sake, hiding in the bathroom or truck to smoke whenever I could. The arguments kept getting worse. She became more controlling and violent over small things. One afternoon, the air conditioner broke in the heat. She lashed out at me, then demanded I stand over her holding a blow dryer blowing hot air. I refused and told her to step outside and cool down. She exploded. I went and sat in the truck. Later, she came out throwing things around and smoking intense silence. She kept pushing for physical intimacy. When I said no, she bought libido gummies and made uncomfortable comments about being an OnlyFans creator who knew what she was doing. I reminded her I wasn't attracted to her that way. One night she got angry that I wasn't showing affection, declared, "We're done," and started screaming while I tried to sleep. She ripped the blankets off me, forced me outside to the truck, and kept yelling. Then she went inside and blasted music so loud it shook the truck. I cried outside for hours before ordering food. She eventually came out, we ate, and went back to bed. After that, she begged me to go to Gator World with her. I was still exhausted from the fight, but gave in. It was awkward the whole time. I paid for everything with the little money I had from online friends. She spent whatever she had on weed, even though she knew my trauma around drugs. When she ran out, the withdrawals made her mean. The final days felt like hell, constant fighting and sleep deprivation. One night she took me to the beach, which I love. We argued the whole drive. She stormed ahead, leaving me struggling to keep up in the dark. At the beach, she barely spoke, walked into the water fully clothed, and acted distant. On the way back, she did the same thing. When I finally snapped and made a comment about her son, she lost it, cursing, name-calling, and telling me to walk home and live on the street. Back at the RV, I started packing my things and said I would sleep in the truck until I could get a hotel. She dropped to her knees and begged me to stay. I agreed for the night, but quietly started making plans with my best online friend of 6 years to come get me later that week. The very next night, we had our worst fight yet. She was screaming at me in the street while neighbors watched. I begged her to take it inside, but she got more aggressive. I finally snapped back, grabbed my stuff, and called my friend crying. I couldn't stay another night. I scraped together money for a cheap hotel and an Uber. The Uber driver was an older man who looked sketchy. The hotel was run down, drug deals outside, people yelling, roaches everywhere. The manager warned me to report anything creepy. I locked myself in the room, shoved a chair against the door, and watched a movie. It was the most peaceful sleep I'd had in months. The next morning, my best friend and her dad picked me up and took me to their place. They let me stay in their garage and treated me like family. That month was genuinely one of the best I'd ever had. My last contact with the woman in Florida was when I had to go back to get my passport, which she had been holding. She had also gone through my phone and Facebook. I got my things, left, and never saw her again. I never imagined that waiting for my boyfriend at a crowded train station in broad daylight would turn into the most terrifying moment of my life. I was 16 or 17 at the time, a girl from a small village who had to move to the city for high school. The nearest big city was about 40 kilometers away, and the public transport was so unreliable that I lived in a school dormitory during the week. I only went home on Fridays and returned on Sundays. Every Sunday, I would arrive at the main station around 2 p.m. and wait for my boyfriend, who came from another town by train. I'd wait upstairs, where I had a clear view of the platforms below, usually with my headphones on, scrolling through my phone. That particular Sunday started like any other. While I was sitting there, I noticed a homeless woman wandering around the station. She would stop occasionally, look around, then keep moving. There were always homeless people in that area, so I didn't think much of it. I stayed focused on my phone. A while later, I saw her walking in my direction. She approached some other people nearby, probably asking for money. Then she continued toward me. I kept my head down, hoping she would pass by, but she stopped right in front of me. I finally looked up. She was staring directly at me with glassy, unfocused eyes, swaying slightly. She looked to be in her 40s, with short, messy brown hair, a dirty face, and a thick coat that seemed too heavy for spring. She wore gray pants and black boots, and carried a black backpack. A greenish liquid was dripping from the corner of her mouth. She was clearly under the influence of something. I could see her lips moving, so I politely took out my headphones. As soon as I did, she went quiet and just kept staring. "What did you say?" I asked gently. She started speaking again, but it was complete mumbling. I couldn't understand a single word. My heart began beating faster. Something about her felt deeply wrong. I shook my head and said, "I'm sorry, I can't understand you." She kept mumbling and reached into the right pocket of her coat. I glanced down, thinking maybe she needed help with something. When I looked back at her face, she pulled her hand out, and I saw it. She was holding a large, sharp piece of broken glass, about 15 centimeters long. She slowly slid it up under her coat sleeve, gripping the sharp end in her palm while still muttering. My eyes widened in shock. Fear hit me like a wave. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice sharper now. Before I could process what was happening, she stepped forward and thrust the glass straight toward my neck. I reacted instantly. I jumped up, pushed her away with all my strength, and screamed, "What the fuck are you doing?" She stumbled back, but kept holding the glass shard, now mumbling angrily. My entire body was shaking with adrenaline and terror. I quickly grabbed my travel bag, never taking my eyes off her. "Leave me alone. Go to hell," I shouted. Everyone in the station was now staring at us. I rushed downstairs and out of the building. Outside, I spotted 2 police officers nearby and felt a huge wave of relief. I walked close to them but didn't say anything. I knew they would probably just make her leave, and I didn't want to risk her coming back later. A few minutes later, I saw her come out of the station too, walking in my direction with an angry expression. The glass was no longer in her hand. I immediately picked up my bag and moved to another part of the station area where she couldn't see me. I was still trembling, in complete shock. Thankfully, I never saw her again. When my boyfriend finally arrived, I told him everything. He was shocked and deeply worried. From that day on, he told me never to wait for him at the station again. I listened. After that incident, I always waited for him at the dormitory instead. Even now, years later, I still live in that city with my boyfriend. We're together and share an apartment. But every rare time I have to pass through that station, my body tenses up and I become hyper alert. The memory of how close I came to serious injury, or worse, if I hadn't reacted in time, still haunts me. To that woman, wherever you are now, I hope our paths never cross again.